Okay, so let's have a bit of a discussion about SQLite SQL, the structured query language. We want to really understand the basics of SQL, just enough to get by. We don't need to be an expert with it. In actual fact, we don't want to be an expert with it. We want to do just enough to get the basic functionalities of databases working. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Okay, so let's have a look at the command for creating tables in SQLite. Now, remembering that a table contains a number of columns, which are fields, and the definition of a table describes the type of data you want to store. So using an example, let's assume you want to create a contacts table. We want to store the person's name, phone, and their email address. Here's how we would create that table, and then we're going to go through and talk about how to insert data and manipulate that data. But firstly, creating the table. The actual command we would type in would be create table contacts bracket name space text comma phone space integer comma email space text right bracket semicolon. Now you can see there by that syntax, it does actually make sense. It's the word create, the word table, that terms that make sense to us. And you'll find that is the case with SQL a lot of the time. They've tried to make it a language that it's not just for programmers. People without technical experience can understand. So hopefully by looking at that, you can sort of see what we're trying to do here. It's creating a table, obviously, and we're giving it the name, contacts. Then we're using the field name. We're saying the field name is called name. The data type, text. We've got a comma to separate fields. Moving on to the second field. The second field's name is phone, space, and then we need to give it a type. So we're choosing the type of integer, which is a whole number, remember. And a comma again to separate the field. Email is the name of the field, and text is the data type for that field. Now this example assumes the phone field would be all numbers. If you wanted to put brackets around a number for an area code or a dash or something like that, obviously an integer field wouldn't be applicable because it can only store numbers, so you'd then change the type text. But in this very contrived, simple example, we're going to leave it like that. So that's how you'd create a new table in SQL. Okay, what about adding data to a table? So if we've created it, but now we want to add some records to there. Well, a command is called insert. So we would type in insert into, then the name of the table, in this case is contacts, and then we enter in brackets the names of the fields that we want to put data in. In this case, name, comma, phone, comma, email. Again, comma is the standard delimiter here. And then we use a space and then the word values. So we're telling the system, these are the values we want to assign to the record, and they're in the same order as the fields. So for example, name, the name would be associated with the value Tim. The phone number would be associated with the number 614567889. And finally, the email would be tim@email.com. So you can see it's a very relatively simple statement. If you look at that, it does actually make intuitive sense. So that's how you'd go about adding a new record in the table. And again, just to clarify, if you're putting text, if the field that you're adding data to is text, you put the text in double quotes. Numbers haven't got quotes. Now, there's lots of variations of this command. Like, for example, we could do away altogether with referring to the fields. We could just put the values in there, but this is enough to get us started for now. Okay, next thing, we've got some data in our table. How do we retrieve that data? Well, the data, to get data back from a table, we use the word select. So we type select, then the fields that we want to come back from the database, and then we put from, and then the name of the table. So select space name, comma, email, space from, space contacts, semicolon, would give us a list of all the records, but just the name and the email fields. In this case, we wouldn't be returning the phone number field because we haven't put that in the list of fields. Incidentally, if we wanted to select all the fields, which is something you often want to do, you just use an asterisk instead of individually having to type in all the separate field names. In addition to this, we can further expand this. We can use a where clause. A where clause is we can say something like where, name equals Tim, for example. So if we don't want to return all the records in the database, we might only return ones that fulfill a certain criteria. And the database examples we'll be going through later will be showing you how to do that. Okay, so we've now created the table, we've now inserted the data, and we've now selected the data or retrieved the data. How do we modify the data that's in a table? Well, we use the update command. Update space, and then whatever the table name is, then set, and then whatever the name of the field you want to update to, and then equals, and then a value. And you can separate them by commas. So in this case, we're setting the name to Bob. Now this would be setting the name to Bob for all records in the database, not just the first one. And this is where the where clause comes in really handy, as we talked about on the previous page. In this case, we could sort of say, we want to update the contact's name to Bob, but we want to put a where clause in there to say where name equals Bill, for example, and that would only change the records where the name was already set to Bill. So you have to be careful with this command, because it's quite easy to literally update all the records in a database literally with one command. And SQLite's not going to hold your hand and come back and sort of say, are you sure? It'll just do it. So again, you'll see this in the practical demonstration I'll give in a few videos' time, how this works in practice. But that's how you modify data in a table. Okay, deleting data from the table, that's the next, really the last thing that we need to know how to do. We've done everything else now. We've created the table, we've inserted data, we've updated data, and we've retrieved the data. To delete the data, we use the delete command. Delete from the name of the table, in this case, contacts. Now, the command that I've given on the screen there would delete all the records in the database, and you're probably spotting a theme here, in that we can use the where clause again to specify which records we wanted to delete. For example, I could type delete from contacts where name equals Tim. And again, Tim would be, because it's a text field, would be in double quotes, and that would that would delete only the records that had a name of Tim. Lastly, we've talked about deleting records. What about if we want to delete the entire table? For example, if we just want to start again, or there's some other reason that we don't want to use that table anymore, we use the command drop. So using the command delete is how to delete data from a table, but it's a different keyword if you want to delete the whole table itself, which deletes all the data as well as the structure and the definition. Drop space table name, in this case drop contacts. So where do we enter these? Well, there's two places that we enter these commands. The first one is we can access the SQLite database from the command line. We can type these commands in direct, so in other words, not using any Java or anything like that. But of course, we can also embed the commands in Java, and that's usually what you'll be doing a lot of, because you'll be wanting your programs which are written in Java to be able to do this, to be able to perform actions on a database. Now, we're going to be doing both of those in the following videos. So that's enough for now. It's enough to get us started. As you can see, there's a base set of commands there, and it's not too hard to learn. Once you've used them and seen them in operation a few times, they will become second nature. Yes, there's certainly more complex commands to learn. For example, when you start trying to retrieve data out of multiple tables and sort of relate data from one table to another, we don't need to know that for now. We can start with the basics, because this is going to cover a large percentage of what you're going to be using a database for. Coming up, now that we know a little bit about SQL, we're going to set up your computer, whether you're on a Mac, PC, or you're running a Linux machine, to be able to use the interactive features of SQLite. Now, this involves setting a path to the Android build tools so that you can run some tools from the command line. Now, don't worry, it's pretty straightforward to do. So your next step is to watch the corresponding video for your operating system, and then move on to the Android file system video. So in other words, there's a video for Mac users, for PC users, and for Linux users following this video. Choose the video that's right for your operating system, watch that, and then move on to the Android file system video, where we'll continue the discussion. I'll see you in that video.